Hey guys, I'm here at the Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle, also known as MoPOP, and I'm going to be checking out the Nirvana exhibit. This is an exhibit I've heard lots about, so I wanted to come check it out for myself. There are a lot of really cool Nirvana items here, including some of the earliest known cassettes of Nirvana, handwritten lyrics, and more. Some of Kurt's guitars are on display along with various other Nirvana gear, including one of Krist Novoselic's bass amp heads and one of Dave Grohl's drum kits. I personally think one of the coolest things about this exhibit is actually the way everything is laid out. The different displays are mostly in chronological order, documenting Nirvana's progression from being a small band in Aberdeen to becoming one of the biggest bands in the world, arguably the biggest band in the world. The Pearl Jam MoPOP exhibit is a little bit different. There's no real chronological order to it. Everything in the Pearl Jam exhibit is kind of spread out everywhere. Not to suggest that's a bad thing, however. Both exhibits work in their own way, so if you do get a chance to visit MoPOP while both exhibits are still here, I definitely recommend checking them both out. If you want to see my video of the Pearl Jam exhibit, the link is available in the description box below. By the way, guys, I just want to quickly mention that if you like what you see and you want to support, the best way is honestly to subscribe. Everything on this channel is completely original. I'm the one doing all the videos and editing everything together, so again, if you want to support, the best way is to subscribe. Now, as mentioned, the Nirvana exhibit is arranged mostly in chronological order, from when Nirvana was a small band in Aberdeen, all the way through to their status as one of the biggest bands in the world. I thought it would be cool to check out the exhibit in reverse chronological order, starting off at a booth discussing Nirvana's fame, and then going backwards and seeing how they got there. I'm a big fan of history. I think the preservation of history and looking into how things got to where they are is extremely important. One of the big turning points in Nirvana's career, in terms of their progression from being an underground band to becoming a mainstream band, was their September 22nd, 1990 show at the Motorsports garage in Seattle. That is considered by many as one of the big turning points in the band's story. And so on that note, in terms of the evolution of the band and discussing how they got to where they did, I want to read to you a segment from Jillian Gigar's Nirvana biography, Entertain Us, The Rise of Nirvana, where the importance of that Motorsports garage show is discussed. It should be noted that Nirvana's lineup at the time of the show consisted of Kurt Cobain, Krist Novoselic, and Dan Peters on drums. We'll get into that right now. The Motorsports show marked a turning point for Nirvana. It was their biggest headlining show in Seattle to date, but it was also one of their last. Over the next 3.5 years, they would play just 8 more shows in the city. I remember watching them and thinking that this was as perfect as a band could be, says Ernie Bailey, and not really expecting anything to happen after that point. I just remember thinking that I had seen a band in its apex and that was it. It's really just a matter of time now before something happens and it's gone. I really didn't imagine what was going to happen in the next year. Interest in Nirvana was quickly moving beyond fans of alternative music. Mark Cates of DGC recalls the following about the September 22nd show at Motorsports Garage. It wouldn't have been random that I was there, he says, because Kim Gordon had told us to sign them, and we had just seen them on tour with Sonic Youth reaching people. That show was like, whoa. Something's going on here. Okay, they're from here, but this is a lot of people to be going to see any band in any city and reacting this way, the way they did at the Motorsports Garage show. There were a few A&R people there. It's funny to think about gigs like that and who's there. Everyone's checking each other out, and really funny things happen. People decide they want to sign a band, and then they leave the gig so that other A&R people think that they won't sign the band. And then they leave the gig so that other A&R people will think that they don't want to sign them, etc. Nirvana's now inevitable move to the majors was the focus of Keith Cameron's next article for Sounds, tellingly entitled, Take the Money and Run. Keith had also been at the Motorsports show, which he calls one of the greatest shows I've ever seen. Not just one of the greatest Nirvana shows. I thought Dan Peters did great. He and Ian were put up at Krist's home, and were on hand for a barbecue Krist and Shelley hosted the day after the Motorsports gig. They were all really nice, especially Krist, who was a great host, he recalls. Interaction with Kurt could be a bit awkward, but I soon got used to the fact that he sometimes just sat there and didn't talk to anyone for considerable periods of time. I thought he was just shy. Fair enough. Keith also gave the Nirvana members long-sleeved Sounds t-shirts. Kurt ended up wearing his on stage at a number of shows over the next year, including a March 8, 1991 show in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, that produced one of Charles Peterson's best-known shots of Kurt playing guitar while seemingly balanced on his head. Charles recalls, just that Vancouver show alone, there's probably been more images reproduced from that than all the others I've photographed put together. Despite his occasional reticence, Kurt was clever enough about his determination to move to a larger playing field, even as he tried to downplay his ambition. It's really not hard to keep your dignity and sign to a major label, he told Keith, while hastening to add, a year ago, we wouldn't even have considered signing with a major or even looking into it. He trod a similarly thin line when he said, maintaining the punk rock ethos is more important to me than anything, before offhandedly casting rock and roll as his only employment option and confessing a yearning for stardom. I don't want to have any other kind of job. I can't work among people. I may as well try to make a career out of this. All my life, my dream has been to be a big rock star. Just may as well abuse it while you can. Still, While Kurt was able to discuss the matter with Keith, he had yet to officially tell Sub Pop of Nirvana's intention to leave, merely assuring Keith the label was aware of what we're doing right now, and hopefully we can all agree on something. In that same article for Keith, Jonathan Poneman replied, "Sooner or later, they, Nirvana, will have to sit down with us and make a deal. I get bummed out about the lack of communication." In Keith's words, "It's been pretty obvious for some time that if any of the emergent US underground bands are to break through into the mainstream, Nirvana will be the ones to do so. Just about the only thing to throw a spanner in the works could be the self-destruct capability that lurks within the volatile personal chemistry of this highly strung three-piece," he concluded precisely. Although he didn't know it at the time, there were further changes already underfoot. When Dan Peters mentioned he'd have to borrow his wife's car to attend the barbecue, Krist and Kurt told him not to worry about it, even though a sounds photo shoot was scheduled to take place at the event. Dan ended up making it to the party, and all appeared to be well. A playful shot of Kurt sticking a cigarette between Krist's bare toes was chosen for the magazine's cover, with the accompanying headline, "Get Your Socks Off with Nirvana." The sound story was set to coincide with a UK tour scheduled for October, but as the days passed, and Dan finally asked Kurt for an update on the arrangements, he was in for a rude shock. As Dan Peters recalls, "Kurt called me, and so I'm like, yeah, so what's up with the tour of England?" And he says, "Well, that's what I'm calling to tell you. We got another drummer." I'm like, "Oh, really?" I wasn't pissed that they got another drummer. I mean, I was fine with it actually. In fact, if anything, I might have been relieved. But just the way it was handled bummed me out. When I found out later on that everyone else knew except me, that's when I started getting pissed. End quote. Indeed, Kurt had announced that Nirvana had a new drummer during an interview with Calvin Johnson's Boy Meets Girl show on Chaos on September 25th, admitting he had yet to tell Dan he'd been replaced. Nor had anything been said as the three posed for pictures for Sounds. "I just felt like a fool," says Dan, "because when the thing for Sounds magazine came out, there's me on the cover and you open it up and a headline or whatever saying Dan before being told to bugger off." The actual quote from the article is Mudhoney's Dan Peters lasted just one gig and a Sounds photo shoot before being told, "Bugger this, you're off." "They weren't upfront with me," Dan continues. "They kinda knew I wasn't going to be in the band anymore, but they didn't have the balls to tell me. Not to sound bitter by any means, I'm not. The only thing I'm ever pissed about is just the way it went down." A month later, music fan and critic Tom Kipp and his co-worker Jim Harrison were on their way to a show by satiric goth metal band Grohl in the woods outside Fairfax City, Virginia. The outdoor event was being held on the extensive property owned by the Cedar Crest Country Club, renowned for having a skating halfpipe on its grounds. Tom had previously lived in Montana, where he was the original vocalist in Deranged Diction, the band that featured Jeff Ament and Bruce Fairweather before the later two departed for Seattle and the ranks of Green River, Mother Love Bone, and Pearl Jam. Tom remembers having to navigate an unmarked, rutted road in an increasingly dense forest to get to the show. "We suddenly emerged into an impressive, unexpected large clearing, with the much ballyhooed metal halfpipe at its center and an array of largish bonfires surrounding it," he says. "Scores of kids from about 12 to 17 were scurrying here and there as we observed what we soon learned was the second opening band with the memorable moniker Coat Hanger Delivery about to start their set. After the band's set, described by Tom as generic pistol-styled punk, the set closer being Sonic Reducer by Dead Boys, Jim suddenly spotted a familiar face among the attendees. "Hey Tom," he said, "that's Dave Grohl over there. I met him a few times back when he used to drum for Scream. Let's say hello." The two walked over and, after some pleasantries, asked Dave what he was up to these days. "I just moved to Washington State," Dave replied. "I joined this band called Nirvana."